Hola, welcome to season 3 of More Than Rice and Beans, the Mother Son podcast where we introduce you to our favorite Latinx creators, innovators, and entrepreneurs.
I'm Miguel, a mechanical engineer PhD student at Johns Hopkins University, funded by a NASA fellowship.
And I'm his mom, Tania. I'm a chef, educator, and proud New Yorican.
This season on More Than Rice and Beans, we've got, well, a lot more for you. More amazing guests, more ridiculous sidebar conversations, and more meaningful discussions on what it's like to navigate this world as a Latinx person.
We're so excited you're joining us for this incredible season, along with our all-star lineup of guests. Get ready, because this time it's way more than rice and beans. Welcome back to More Than Rice and Beans. We're excited to introduce another all-star guest for our third season. Today we are joined by my good friend and fellow New Yorican, Ed Rodriguez. Ed is an artist, writer, and animator specializing in storytelling and character development with his production company, IdeaRworks. He was a creative director at Walt Disney Studios for over a decade before working for other entertainment giants like Little Tikes, Spin Master, and Studio JP. And if that wasn't enough, he's also the creator of Kiki Koki, a beloved children's character book based on the Coqui frog of Puerto Rico. Kiki Koki and his friends have starred in 2 best-selling books and have their own line of merchandise, from coloring books to t-shirts. I'm so thrilled to welcome Ed Rodriguez to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice intro. I have to just clear up one thing, though. As a New Yorker, you'll appreciate this. The name of the studio is, and it's a common mistake, a lot of people say IdeaRworks, but it's IdeaRworks, because as you know, as a New Yorker, everybody says idea. What's the big idea? So,
cool.
Doubles for Rodriguez, too. So it's
Oh, that's smart. I like that.
Yeah, it was kind of like a fluke. You know, it was like we were looking for names and we were talking to my kids who all grew up with California accents. And they were like, what do you think of IdeaRworks? And they were like, idea?
I never heard of that. Cool.
That's amazing. I love that it was part of, like, from your kids, too. That makes it even better. So, just to start off, I feel like we have a lot in common because, like me, you were born in Brooklyn, New York to Puerto Rican parents, and so you got to visit Puerto Rico a lot, and that's the same thing as me. And so you were kind of shaped by those two cultures. So can you tell us a bit about your background and how you got into illustration, maybe how being shaped by those two cultures might have influenced you?
Yeah. So I grew up in Brooklyn, and this was like in the 70s and 80s when Brooklyn was like Crooklyn. I mean, your mom could tell you. It's like it's changed a lot. So Puerto Rico was always like this, like, oh my God, it's like going to like this, beautiful tropical paradise. And it was just so different than anything in growing up in the city in New York, especially in those days and stuff. And so I always had an appreciation for the island. And my parents, they had built a house there. They were going to move back there, and they did wind up retiring back there and stuff. So it was always like a place that they, stayed connected with. It wasn't like they moved to New York and they were just New Yorkers, which there was people like that. How I got into art, I really can't tell you what my original inspiration was because there was no artists in my family or anything, but I just like drew from a very early age, like probably like 3.5 or 4. I used to wait for my mother to go grocery shopping, and I'd take the brown paper bags that they had back then, and I like laid them out open, and then I would sit in front of the TV and watch Bugs Bunny or Underdog or Tom and Jerry and just like copy whatever. So that was like my original early training. I used to joke that if I would have been born a little later, when the plastic bags came out, I probably would have been a terrible artist because drawing on plastic bags is a lot more difficult.
Yeah, definitely. I guess you could still kind of use markers, but even then it wouldn't work out too well.
So from there, I went to the High School of Art and Design, which is still around, which was a great experience. After high school, when I graduated, I went to Pratt Institute. And then I got lucky in that shortly, a couple of years after I graduated, unbeknownst to me, Disney had an office in New York. And I kind of got into Disney in a big way. And it was kind of like to put in perspective, when I went to college, Disney was like pretty much like the last animation studio left in town. Animation looked like it was something from a bygone era, and like it was like Disney and Hanna Barbera, and it didn't look like there was much of a career, and looked like Disney might even go out of business in those days. But fast forward, it became like this renewed interest in Disney, and I was already um, working at Disney when they released The Little Mermaid, and that kind of like spawned the rebirth of Disney. As you, Miguel, you in your lifetime, you've always been what Disney's always been around.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of insane to me to think that Disney could have possibly
Yeah,
gone down.
yeah, it was pretty scary. It's like I think if it wasn't for the parks, they probably would have been gone because I think the parks kind of floated them for years.
Mm.
But luckily, they rebounded, and a lot of young people went back into the were young back then in the '80s, and it kind of like gave a fresh blood to the company, and it's kind of like been on a trajectory ever since.
And what was it like being a creative director for Disney?
Well, I started as a character artist, designing products and stuff for Disney in the New York office, and then I became a creative director later on when I moved to LA, and I worked for a Disney store where we designed like all the stuff for a Disney store. It was fun. It was like getting paid to learn. I got to work with amazing people. I mean, I would be in meetings with like John Lasseter and Brad Bird and all of the directors. We get to see all the film stuff beforehand while they were working on it. So that's what really inspired me to get into animation as well. And it was like, again, it was like kind of getting paid. There was a lot of perks, obviously, with the company, but it was like getting paid for continuing my education. I probably learned more at Disney. Probably learned more in my first year at Disney than I did in my 8 years of school prior to that.
Yeah, I think that's what most people say in most fields is that they really learn when they actually get to do.
Yeah.
And then where was the or when was the point in your life that you kind of decided that that's what you wanted to do, that you really wanted to get into that field?
Into art.
Yeah.
Uh, Probably my first report card. I was, I think art was the only probably good grade I got. I was a terrible student when I was young. I don't know. I never really was interested in other things. So if I didn't get into art, I don't know what I really would have done. So I think I always, in my mind, like I said, I started drawing at 3. And I always wanted to be an artist, and I don't think I really ever entertained any other options.
Yeah, so I guess it's definitely meant to be. That's what you were born to do, I guess.
Yeah, and my 3
And
kids
then,
are all artists too.
oh wow.
Yeah,
And then and there was no art in your family, you said, right? Originally?
originally no, but my brother is an artist as well. He worked for Disney for years as well, and he lives in Florida, and he's an artist too. Um, but before that, like yeah, we didn't. None of my parents drew. I didn't have any cousins or aunts or uncles that drew or anything like that. So
Yeah, now your family's filled with artists. That's great. And when and why did you decide to launch your current studio, IdeaRworks?
well, I was actually still working with for other people at that time, but I already had the idea that I wanted to do the cookie book, and so um, I think when the point when I kind of decided I wanted to self publish initially, so I wanted to create like a studio brand around that. So that's when I did it. But I always had plans that I would like grow it as I got, at some point I would go to work 100% on that stuff.
It's really cool. And now you are also working on your brand based on the success of your children's book, Kiki Koki, The Enchanted Legend of the Koki Frog. Obviously, as the founder of a company called Koki the Chef, I am very familiar with the Koki Frog, and our characters have even had some fun collaborations in the past. But our listeners who aren't, can you tell us briefly about the Koki Frog?
Well, as much as I know about the cookie frog, um,
Yeah,
like you, it was, one of my earlier memories going to Puerto Rico, and you hear that distinct sound.
yeah.
Especially coming from Brooklyn, I remember I went to Puerto Rico when I was 3. I don't remember much about that trip, but then I think we went again when I was about 6. And all I remember was like getting to my grandmother's house in the country in Kamui, and it's like you're up
Mm-hmm.
in the hills, and you're gonna go to sleep. And this was like back where they still had like mosquito nets over the bed.
Oh
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, and I remember not being able to sleep because the sound of the cookies and the other
Oh.
creatures, but the cookie in particular was deafening. It was so loud because it must have been like after a rainfall or something, and it was just like. So that's like my earliest memory of the cookie. Um, and then, as an adult, go to Puerto Rico and as a young adult and stuff. But it really was when I went back with my kids for the first time. My parents are retired. They built a house in Puerto Rico. We went to visit and kind of like rediscovering the cookie through them, through their eyes,
Mhm.
was kind of the inspiration that led to the book. Um, because of all the things there are to do to Puerto Rico, the forts, the beaches, the caves, the mountains, everything, the coquille frog was, of course, the thing that kind of stood out to them. So I kind of relived my childhood like that. Like, oh yeah, I remember how infatuated I was with the coquille when I was a kid too.
What was it about the local folklore that inspired you to write the children's book?
So I actually didn't know a lot about the folklore. So that wasn't the original inspiration, but I was inspired once I
Mm.
did my research. What was inspiring, like I said, it was like I went with my kids and I wanted to, like with every other tourist, you want to like bring home like something from your trip. So we went looking around for something for the kids. And as you know, there's a ton of coquille stuff everywhere in Puerto Rico, but a lot of it was kind of, it was all very realistic and kind of, I know, this is a podcast, but I'm holding up a kind of like a touristy thing you would find in Puerto Rico, which
Yeah.
looks like
Yeah.
almost like an ashtray with a coquille and a Puerto Rican flag painted on it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff. Um, and I remembered I had gone to Paris and London like a year prior, and there I remember that in Paris, like Madeline was like front of store at a lot of places when you went, and in London it was like Paddington Bear and the original Winnie the Pooh, and I was like, wow, wouldn't it be great for Puerto Rico to have a story somewhat like that, that the kids of Puerto Rico could kind of say, hey, this is our story. And I was actually looking for that and I couldn't find it. And then, at first it was like disappointment that I couldn't find it, that quickly turned into inspiration of like, well, maybe, it'll be up to me to do something like that. So that was the inspiration for the book. And then I researched, um, the Tainos, and that's where because like most Puerto Ricans, probably like our generation, two Tainos, like I think we grew up knowing very little about Tainos. At least I did.
Yeah.
I think back then in Puerto Rico it was all about the Spanish culture, and even then that wasn't.
Mhm.
But still, there was a lot of like we didn't realize even what the Taino influences that were around. We didn't realize that they were Taino influences, right?
Mhm.
Uh, but and the story that I discovered, or the common like thread throughout the Taino stories, was that Koki was a little boy that basically disappeared, and that the Koki frogs were calling his name. But in the indigenous stories, it's actually very kind of almost dark and sad. And so I kind of took that as a premise, but then I kind of just made it. I Disneyfied it, if you will, in that.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say because a lot of the Disney stories were bad and they turned them
Yeah.
all to fairy tales.
Yeah, so I kind of made it a more like for today's audiences. I think people expect children's stories to be happier.
Yes.
So that's kind of what I did. But I took a lot of the inspiration um, from that. But if you look at my book, some of the things that kind of stand out, and one of the reviewers called it out, is that you see frogs in like guayabera shirts, and they're
Yeah.
like the little hats and stuff, and it's like so I took some liberties because I started. I'm an artist first, so before and then a writer secondly, I'd say. So I started with drawings, and I was coming up with these frogs with guayaberas and all these things that I wanted to put into the story. And then once I realized like this needs to be a Taino story because that's where the original stories originated from. But I didn't want to necessarily walk away from that stuff. And it's also that stuff was like inspired by the Puerto Rico I knew. And so I kind of wanted, like with the Puerto Rico of today, it's a mashup of all those cultures. So I kind of did that in the story, and that it's kind of like a mashup. So it still kind of represents the Puerto Rico as we know it, as well as embracing the Taino story.
Just to let the audience know, Tainos are indigenous people from Puerto Rico, natives to Puerto Rico. And the word coqui is actually a Taino word. Right,
And it's
Miguel?
related to the sound that the frog makes. They
Exactly.
might not know that either. So they sing "Koki Koki" in the night and after it rains too.
Coqui? Coqui?
Oh, that was actually not bad.
Oh, thank you. Years of practice.
I just was auditioning for the Kiki Koki animated.
Yes. Oh my God! I would love to be the voice of that. I would love that.
You have the mic for it, so it works. So what started as a children's book kind of turned into this pretty big empire with coloring books and a sequel and a bunch of characters.
I don't know if I'd use the word empire. You're being very...
we're pushing into the future. So how is it? Tell us a bit about how it's like taking something like literally as small as a Koki frog, because Koki frogs are tiny, into this big brand.
Well, again, yeah, I don't know if I describe it as big, but growing, growing slowly. It's been one step at a time. When I first got into this, I didn't know, like I mentioned, I self-published. I knew nothing about self-publishing, but I just took baby steps, learned as much as I could, and the timing was right. The industry was kind of so. With everything, that's kind of been my approach. As far as building on it, I'll give you guys a little bit of an analogy. When I was one of the last full-time jobs I had was working for a company. We were doing we did all the toys for Frozen, and Frozen, not all the toys, but like we had a big share of the toy market for the Frozen, Disney's Frozen, and it was like the biggest thing ever, like overnight, right? Like once the movie hit, it just was like the biggest brand in the world. And even a brand of that size, which was the biggest, and I'm talking like it eclipsed everything else, right? It was like Frozen, and then like, I don't know, $100 million below it was the next thing or more. As soon as that brand started like just downtrending, it was, now keep in mind, it's still the biggest brand in the world, but it's just now instead, it's not just shooting up anymore. Now it's starting to like plateau and sales start to come down a little bit. The retailers are like screaming at Disney, or screaming is the right term, but they're all like, when is the sequel coming out? How are you guys going to keep it? So the point I'm making is like when you start a brand or you start an IP or whatever it is, it's kind of like you got to feed the beast. It's like as soon as you put the first thing out, you already got to be working on the next thing. And especially in today's market where, people just have a short attention span or they're moving on to the next thing or whatever, but so it's a constant thing to try to like to re-energize and keep things moving.
And how do you decide? How do you decide what you're going to add next? Is it like a grueling process where you have to like cut a lot of ideas before you actually get to it?
Well, like most people, not being like independently wealthy, I also work on other projects, right? So for, that pay the bills as well. So I work for, right now, I'm art directing a animated show for a studio in Canada. So that takes up a lot of my time. So I have my projects too. And then I have to plan for my projects, but I have more projects than I have time for, put it to you that way. So I have the third cookie book, which originally I've had it written for a while and laid out and drawn out or roughed out. And I'm working on the final illustrations now, but I had it originally planned for like 2020, I guess it was, like right around the time COVID hit. So I kind of delayed it, postponed it and stuff. I have two other titles outside of Cookie that I have, or three others actually, written and kind of worked out and what I want to do. So it's just finding the time of day. So, Cookie is the priority. So that will be out first. And then it's just kind of playing it by ear and kind of like I said, feeding the beast and just kind of try to keep things moving. And a lot of times you got to just put a lot of stuff out there and just kind of see what works. But I'm also going to do some more toy stuff. Like I have the plush for Cookie, and I have another toy concept product that I'm planning on putting out hopefully by the end of the year.
And how do your kids play into that? Do you ever use them as like a backboard for any of your ideas?
Oh, when they were younger? Oh, for sure. I bounce ideas off of them and stories off of them and just kind of see how engaged they are.
When they were younger?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now they don't
Well,
want to know.
now my youngest is in college now,
Mm.
so they're all doing their own stuff. I mean, I still engage them because they're artists, so I still
Yeah.
bounce stuff off of them as well. But when they were younger, they were more the target audience.
I think it's so interesting that you went into this massive field of children's book publishing and you chose to carve out something that's so uniquely Puerto Rican, yet it's still something that every child can enjoy and identify with. Why is it so important for you to include significant references to your culture and heritage in your work?
Um, well, like I mentioned on that trip to Puerto Rico, I looked around and I saw that it was missing. At that point, now
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have been doing this more. It's a lot better. I mean, if you look at like the Disney movies of late, with Coco and
Yeah.
Encanto, and also I think that in the last like 10 years, things have really kind of moved in a way that was like it's moved really fast. And I think that now those guardrails or those gates that were those gatekeepers are kind of gone, and I don't think this it's ever going back to the way it was. But I launched the book in 2010, and there really was not a lot. So and so I saw that there was a need for it.
Yeah. Just like Labor in Kenya too. That also opened up a lot of doors and brought in our culture as well and taught us a little bit about, the Puerto Rican culture and together the Tainos as well, because in some of the I think in one of the comic books for Labor in Kenya, they brought in Groot from where is Groot from?
Marvel.
Marvel,
Yeah,
Guardians of the
Marvel,
Galaxy.
which is kind of
Yeah.
cool because I didn't, like put those two together. That Groot is a Taino tree almost, right? I'm not so sure about the history, but I find that very interesting. Yeah. So, what are your favorite books as a child, and did they have any influence on Kiki Koki?
Um, well, where the wild things are was a book I remember liking a lot as a kid. I liked like the Bearstein Bears and Mad Magazine and any kind of Disney storybook, mostly for the artwork. Um,
Ah,
so those are like probably my influences. I think you see a lot of the Disney. It's funny because I tried to be so un-Disney when I did the book, but every time people looked at it, they kept going, "Oh, it's so Disney." And I was like, oh, I guess that's in my.
really?
So, but yeah, I guess those were my influences.
So, what made it so Disney? Was it the story or the drawing?
Oh, did mine?
Yeah.
I think there's the drawings. I took it as a
Okay.
compliment. When people would tell me, it was mostly like in interviews in Puerto Rico. I did a lot of like publicity, especially for the first book, and the
Mm.
interviewers would be like, "Oh, it looks like if Disney were to do it, something on Puerto Rico, this is what it would look like." So I took it as a compliment from that perspective. Maybe they took it as like, "Oh, it looks professional."
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a nice way of
That's
saying
true. It's
that.
synonymous. Yeah, at this
Yeah.
point for like animation, I feel like saying that it's Disney is synonymous with saying it's professional.
So, okay, Ed, vamos a hablar de comida. Woohoo. Okay. What are some of your favorite Puerto Rican dishes that can make you feel at home anywhere in the world?
Luckily, my wife is Puerto Rican and she cooks. And so for the holidays, we always do the traditional arroz con gandules,
See.
pernil. I've never been a big pasteles fan, I have to say. For some reason, I don't know why.
Oh,
But my
same.
kids
I was
all love.
never a big fan of it
Oh yeah,
either. Yeah.
but my kids all love pasteles, and they love Puerto Rican food. They eat everything. They love Puerto Rican food more than me. I was picky as a kid. I kind of grew into Puerto Rican food as I got older.
Mm,
Um, But if I had to pick one thing, I think tostones is the thing that you can kind of add that
yeah.
to and make it feel Puerto Rican.
So not too long ago, actually, in this podcast, we interviewed sculptor Dave Cortez, who does a lot of sculpting and clay work with like Marvel and DC characters, and he told us a bit about his creative process. But now that we have you here, who is more on the side of like 2D drawings, I would love to know more about your creative process, and also for your characters, since you have to kind of come up with them yourself, how you come up with the personality, if they're based off of anyone.
Yeah, it's funny. You asked that. So, um, like I mentioned earlier, I'm more of an artist than a writer. So I actually start everything with sketches. So when I got the idea, and I put quotes because I don't know if I had an idea, but when I had the inspiration to do something on the Koki, I just started doing drawings. Like I said, I wound up drawing like frogs with guayaberas and stuff, and I had kind of no idea where I was going, and I did research and, like I said, I kind of landed on like, okay, this needs to be a Taino story because that's the oldest story that to this day people kind of hand down like word of mouth in Puerto Rico that Koki was a little Taino Indian boy and stuff. But I yeah, I do sketches, and then from the sketches I get inspiration. And then I just kind of like block out like little story ideas, and somehow the pieces all kind of wind up fitting together. And then I write dialogue, or I write a narrative based off of like the story points that I have. Like I kind of figure out usually like the beginning and the end, right? Like I kind of like, okay, I know it's about a little Dino boy, and then the ending is going to be, oh, he's going to get turned back in, and I got to figure out everything in the middle. And then I just start plotting like, oh, it'd be cool if this happens. Oh, it'd be fun if that happens. Oh, I want to make sure I include this thing from Puerto Rican culture or whatever it may be. And that's kind of how like I kind of plot it out.
That's interesting because I feel like a lot of people that I've talked to that work on stories and stuff, they usually have a tough time ending it. Like they know the beginning and the journey, but then they don't know how to actually end it.
Oh yeah, well you could paint yourself into a corner that way. That's why I kind of I try to come up at the beginning and the end first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely good. And so the are they or do you have like anyone who has influenced the personality of your character specifically?
Um, Personality wise, well, like I said, my son was pretty young back then, and my son's name is Keith. But my daughter, who was much younger than him at the time, couldn't pronounce it, and she would call him Kiki, and the name kind of stuck. And so when I was doing the book, um, I always wanted to give it a name, the character a name, but I wasn't going to call him like Kevin Cookie. Like I was looking for something that felt more like that it could be part of the story, and then being that it was like my son's nickname, we thought, oh, Kiki's kind of a cool thing, and totally by accident, I think it's in Japanese, or I think it's Japanese that or some Hawaiian dialect, but Kiki Koki actually means either cute boy or small boy or something like that. So, and that was like totally by coincidence.
How
Well,
cool.
yeah, that worked out really well.
Yeah.
And how is your process similar or different between creating something for the screen versus like a children's book for the page, like what you've been doing with Kiki?
Oh, so that's actually good because right now I'm working, like I said, with a studio, and it's their IP, obviously, and but I'm the art director on the project, and I can tell you what the biggest difference is when you do something. So if you're, especially if you're self-publishing, it's like I answer to myself, right? So I make all the decisions, of what I want in it, what I don't want in it, design. When you're working with in animation, um, animation is very expensive. There's a lot of people involved, so there's a lot of people involved in the decision making process. It's not like a one person thing. Even if it was your own IP, I mean, even if I were producing Kiki Koki with a studio, if they're investing in the animation, they would have an opinion about certain things, right?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest difference. It's like if you're doing something for a book or for a drawing or for an illustration, the bigger the investment, the less control you're going to have over it. So that's the biggest difference.
Do you ever get frustrated with those limitations, or do you see it as kind of a challenge for your creative process?
I think that the roadblocks and the challenges always wind up, for me, I would say primarily being they kind of make you discover things that you wouldn't naturally do. So a lot of times they wind up being a blessing in disguise.
So, what is it like being a Latino in your industry?
There's a lot of Latinos, especially now. There's a lot of Hispanics, and I think a lot of that is because your art is what sells you in, and so it's kind of hard to deny, people with talent in that regard. So it's been great. I don't know.
So, you don't feel alone. You feel like there's a community of Latinos out there who are super creative.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, even
That's
from the
good.
beginning, even when I first started working at the Disney office, there was quite a fair share of Hispanics and uh, Latinos working in the industry already.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot. Dave Cortez was talking about the same thing, that he's seen a lot of Latinos in sculpting. I think it's very interesting that Latinos seem to grasp onto the creative side of things, which is also funny because most Latino parents are like nagging their kids to like do something like become a doctor or something like that. But I think it's great that there's a big community of Latinos in the creative side of things.
Yeah, it's I kind of have a theory about that a little bit, and like I was saying, because you're telling, like when I first joined the Disney office, outside of the creative department, there were not a lot of Latinos or other minorities really working. And like I said, I think it's because when you're doing art, it's about your artwork, and it's different than like handing in a resume, And I think that it kind of breaks down those barriers where people kind of could like just be closed minded about others, and it just kind of like opens that door. So that may be why there's a lot of Hispanics in the arts, because if you're good in the arts, you're good, and it's
Have
and you have the work to prove it. It's not like a resume or a
hmm
reference from someone else, or it's hard to
Yeah,
get
you
that.
got to show it. You got to have a portfolio.
So, can you tell us a bit about anything that you're working on outside of what I'm going to call the Kiki Koki verse?
Oh, now it's a verse. If we go,
I'm a-
so yeah, so I do work so right now I'm working primarily for a studio called Epic Story Media, and it's I don't think it's a secret that they are working on. No, it's not a secret, so I can say it. Are you familiar with Talking Tom, the app and the video
Oh
games?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
so they're working on a series for Talking Tom, and so I'm the art director on that series. So it'll probably
Cool.
we're in this production of the show. So we did development, we're in production, and then um, I don't know. It'll probably go into the animated phase in a couple of months. So keep your eyes open. There'll probably be some announcements about it coming up.
Wow, that's interesting. I did not know that they were planning on doing that.
Yeah,
So did
yeah.
they announce it to the world already, right?
Well, I know they had it at like a couple of the trade shows.
Okay.
So I mean, so people know about it. So it's not like top secret. Um,
Okay. Well,
and then
congratulations.
oh, thank you. So and I've done work. I do stuff, consulting work and stuff occasionally with like Universal and Spin Master, who I used to work with, the Paw Patrol guys. Uh, I used to work with at that studio a few years ago. I still do stuff for them occasionally.
Oh, they did Paw Patrol. That's huge too.
Yeah, yeah. I was working with them. We were at the beginning. It wasn't Paw Patrol. I left right when that was like kind of starting out as a concept.
What advice do you have for someone interested in getting into animation or illustration?
Well, I guess it depends on their age. But But
Really?
I mean, if you're young, well, if you're young and you're developing, I would say draw. That would
Hmm.
be my first thing of advice. It's like if you're interested and you're a young person, then you should just keep drawing,
Mm. Okay.
and that is going to be the foundation of everything that you do. And there's so much online that you can learn now too. Uh,
Mhm.
but I would also say for someone who's like maybe an artist in another field and wants to make the transition, I transitioned from, I originally started kind of like on the illustration side of the business, and then I went into toy design, and then I went into animation, like later on when I was already in my 40s. So it's possible to kind of transition and get it. Just, uh, you know, do the hard work, uh, research, find people in the field. Uh,
Be
don't
part
be
of a
afraid.
community.
Yeah, don't be afraid to take a step back to take a step forward. I've done that a few times, just to kind of earn my stripes and stuff and learn.
Right. So, what advice do you have for someone who wants to get their foot in front of the door, like a company like Disney?
Oh, well, there's so many more avenues now, but an introduction is the biggest thing you could do. If you know someone that works somewhere,
Yeah, of
regardless of
course.
the department, a personal introduction is still always the best avenue for any kind of job. But I would do LinkedIn. Reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn. They're looking, a lot of places are looking for younger people. They're purposely looking for diversity. It's a really good time, I think, for young people and people of different backgrounds now. Like I said, the last 10 years has been amazing in that way. Um, so I think things have a way of leveling out. I mean, there is more competition in that. There's more people like are going to school for animation.
Mhm.
So, going off of working for Disney, I mean, I feel like Disney is one of those companies where a lot of people kind of dream to work there since like they were little if they're an artist. So, how was it actually working for Disney? How did it feel being there? And I mean, is it what everyone makes it up to be?
Well, I mean, it's like any other company. There's going to be ups and downs and stuff like that. But as an organization, especially the years that I spent there, I felt like it was great. So people are what really make up Disney. And there's a lot of like-minded people, and there's a lot of creative people and people that kind of have an idea of what the company should be. And so most of the people there, it's a really positive experience working there. And then the history of it, I'm a big Walt Disney fan.
So, before we let you go, I have a bunch of rapid fire questions for you.
Oh
So, are you
no,
ready?
probably not. So rapid fire, does that mean like a really just quick, short answer?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
All right. So, what's your favorite book?
Oh, geez, my favorite book. Oh God. Okay. Okay.
Pick one from your library behind you.
Surrounded by like 400,000 books. So that's set up. I can't. I don't know about Kiki Koki. There you go. I'll be so.
Okay. That's good. That works. And now, what is your favorite animated movie?
Oh, geez. I really like Dumbo. Um, and I really like. Geez, I should know this. I should have a better answer off the top of my head. I probably would say Dumbo and 101 Dalmatians. Something like classic Disney in there. Would probably have to be.
And what's your favorite part about visiting Puerto Rico?
Um, well, family. I still have a lot of family. My mom actually still lives in Puerto Rico. Um, so rapid fire, it's family, and then the rest is just the culture and the food and the beauty of the place.
Oh, yes, the food. Definitely the food, too. And now, I know this is going to be really difficult, but if you could choose one of your favorite characters that you've worked on besides Kiki Koki, what would it be?
Oh, probably Mickey Mouse. I'm a big Mickey Mouse fan. Always have been. I
Oh,
drew the character for like I don't know, 15 years or something. So
wow. And what's your favorite Disney urban legend?
favorite Disney urban legend? I don't know if I know an what do you mean by an urban legend? Like something that's not true or something that, or
Well,
just like,
something that we don't know is true, if it's true or not, but people talk about it.
oh, geez. God, I don't know if I know anything. Oh, okay. I do have one. So there's always been, it's more of a theory of mine. So, have you ever heard that, that Walt Disney was frozen?
Yes, yeah, I have heard that one. Yeah.
I have a theory on how that rumor came to be. Because
Oh.
I remember as a kid, there was a joke. It was like, hey, did you hear Walt Disney's Frozen? And then people go, no, really? And they go, yeah, he's in suspended animation. Boom, boom. And I think that like people from my generation, like they just remembered the punchline, like that he was like they forgot it was a joke. And I think that's how the rumor started. But that's my theory on the rumor.
That's interesting because I never even heard that joke, so I kind of like that.
Yeah, well, it's so long ago that.
And then what's the best restaurant in LA or your favorite restaurant?
Oh my god, in LA, I don't know. I think it's like I still like the New York pizza better. There's a couple of good pizza places here, but I'm gonna do a shout out to Mofongos in
Oh,
North Hollywood, which is a Puerto Rican restaurant. So
Okay.
oh, that's good that there's a good Puerto Rican restaurant over there. And if you can sum up your Latino experience in one word, or maybe two, I'll give you 2 words.
my Latino experience, blessed.
So thank you for everything that you do with Kiki Koki. I'm really glad that we have someone out there that's bringing some Puerto Rican culture into more homes out there. Your
Okay.
work is really inspiring, so thank you.
Oh, thank you, and thank you guys, and the work that you guys are doing, and Goki the chef, and this podcast now, and I really appreciate that, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you guys.
Where can we purchase Kiki Koki books and merchandise?
You can purchase Kiki Koki books and merchandise at kikikoki.com.
Ooh.
So, okay, KIKIKOKI, just in case people will be typing in Koki. How do you spell that?
Yeah.
I can imagine it with the 2 index finger KI. That's amazing.
Oh gosh.
Tom is COM. Just to be clear, I want to make sure nobody.
Yeah. .com.
I
.com.
all over that one.
Thanks again for joining us. We can't wait for more Kiki Koki and Koki the Chef collabs.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely hinting at future stuff. Wink, wink.
Yes, wink, wink.
If you have an idea, let me know.
I'm trying.
I'll tell you what, maybe for sure when I have the third book ready, I'll reach out and then we'll figure something out.
Oh my gosh.
Because the third book, I'll give you a little bit away. It's going to be based off of the Puerto Rican parrot. So the second book was the first book was a Koki, and then I introduced Bunsey the turtle, and the turtle was inspired by the turtles in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And so the third book is going to be inspired by the Puerto Rican parrot. So now don't be cooking parrots. We're not going to do anything like that.
Okay. All right. No bird food.
Parrot adobo or
we'll keep away.
That's actually good too. Not a lot of people know about the Puerto Rican parrot. Like I didn't even know that Puerto Rico had an indigenous parrot until like just a few years ago. And they're
it almost went extinct. And it's still on the brink of extinction. There's only a few, I don't know if there's a few thousand or 1,000. There's not that many, but they've been bringing them back.
Yeah, so it would actually be really great to raise more awareness through your book with that too. Hopefully that helps out.
That's what I'm hoping for, to do something with Yunque and the group there that's bringing them back.
Yeah. So you've been listening to More Than Rice and Beans. If you enjoyed this episode with special guest Ed Rodriguez, leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It helps spread the word about our show so we can promote more amazing Latinx creators and innovators.
And if you're interested in learning more about Puerto Rican culture, check our cooking class, A Taste of Puerto Rico, at kokithechef.com. In this online class, You can cook along with me in our own kitchen as I teach you how to make Puerto Rican cocktails and appetizers. Click on the link in the show notes to book your experience today.
Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll be back in your podcast feed again soon with another amazing guest. So see you next time.